This podcast is sponsored by the book, The Biased Brain, by Bo Bennett, PhD. Dive into the world of cognitive biases and transform your understanding of reality. Get your copy today at thebiasedbrain.com.
Attention bias in anxiety, how your brain skews perception and why it matters. Discover how attention bias shapes anxiety, affecting how we see threats, and learn ways to recognize and overcome this common cognitive distortion. Attention bias in anxiety, why our brains get stuck on the negative. Hey, have you ever noticed how when you're feeling anxious, your mind tends to zero in on all the bad stuff? Like if you're in a crowded room, suddenly every weird glance or whisper feels like it's about you. Or when you're worried about a test or a presentation, you can't stop thinking about every little thing that could go wrong. That, my friend, is a classic example of something called attention bias in anxiety. So what exactly is attention bias? In simple terms, it's when your brain tends to pay more attention to certain types of information, especially threatening or negative cues, and filter out anything positive or neutral. For people with anxiety, this means their minds are primed to scan the environment for danger or social threats, sometimes even when there's really nothing to worry about. This bias isn't just about feeling nervous, it actually shapes how we see the world. Imagine trying to watch a movie, but the screen is flickering and you can only catch the scary parts. Your interpretation of the whole story becomes distorted, right? That's a parallel to what happens in anxious minds, where cognitive biases like attention bias interfere with normal thinking and make the world look more threatening than it really is. Why does this happen? Well, from an evolutionary perspective, being alert to potential dangers helped our ancestors survive. So the brain developed a sort of early warning system to detect threats quickly, but for someone with anxiety, this system runs amok and gets stuck on false alarms, causing heightened worry and stress. You can think of it a bit like a biased brain. This term refers to how our minds filter and interpret information based on past experiences, emotions, and expectations, rather than objective reality. This bias in decision-making doesn't just affect anxious individuals, it's a universal part of human cognition. But with anxiety, the attention bias specifically zeroes in on threats, which can really skew perception and behavior. When you start to understand cognitive biases, including attention bias, you get better at recognizing when your mind is playing tricks on you. For example, during a social event, your brain might focus on someone's neutral expression and interpret it as disapproval, which fuels anxious feelings. But this is more about your brain's wiring and less about actual facts. This is where critical thinking and biases come into play. By learning to step back and question your immediate and biased reactions, you can start to challenge those anxious thoughts. Is the threat really there, or is your brain just overly focused on a possible negative outcome? Trainings like mindfulness or cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, aim to help people retrain their attention patterns and reduce this harmful bias. Personally, I find it fascinating how attention bias connects to the bigger picture of how our minds operate. If you're interested in exploring more about this and other cognitive biases, I highly recommend checking out the book The Biased Brain by Bo Bennett, PhD. It's an eye-opener about the quirks in human cognition that drive bias in decision-making, and it really helps bring to light why we sometimes aren't the logical thinkers we like to believe we are. Understanding cognitive biases like attention bias not only helps with anxiety but also improves how we approach problems, communicate, and make choices in everyday life. When you recognize that your brain can be biased, you start developing better strategies for clear, critical thinking, and that's a win for everyone. If this topic piques your curiosity, definitely explore the book and unravel the secrets of your mind today. Head over to The Biased Brain to learn more. Trust me, it's worth the read for anyone who's ever wondered why their thoughts don't always line up with reality.